Okay, so I've been asked to talk a little bit about improving our self-image, which is an interesting topic, actually very deep. If we ask ourselves, well, why would one want to improve our self-image? It's clear that we would want to improve our self-image because we're not happy with our self-image. And what does that mean? It means we're not happy with how we perceive ourselves, how we see ourselves. So essentially, we're going to be looking at how we can improve, how we can change how we see ourselves. So what does that mean? Basically, I think it really comes down to how can we feel good about ourselves. So that's an interesting place to begin. First of all, each and every one of us has an experience of self. Like you can check, are you aware of yourself? I think if you check, of course, we're always aware of ourselves. I like this, I don't like that, I'm here, I'm not there, I want this, I don't want that. We're constantly referencing a self. And we're not confused about that. There's a self here. Like you don't suddenly look at the person next to you and go, am I you? No, I'm me, you're you. We're all aware of that all the time. But if we ask ourselves a little bit more precisely, where is that self? Where is this self that I'm referencing? Is it somehow in here? Like if you opened up the body, would a little mini-me jump out? Oh, there it is, myself, scamper across the floor like a hamster. Clearly not. So the self is not a physical thing. So what is it? Because we're aware of it, but where is it? So this is actually where the term self-image is really interesting, because almost implicit within how we use the term self-image within our society, it's like, well, there's a self, and then there's the image of the self. So kind of how you perceive the self, but in Buddhism, and this is a super deep topic, in Buddhism, the image of the self is the self. There's no self other than the image of the self. For example, in How to Transform Your Life, by, of course, our teacher Geshe Kelsang Gyatso, and actually in the final chapter of the book, because the understanding of the nature of the self is really lies at the very kind of heart of Buddhist practice. Understanding how to correctly relate to the self is actually key to the fulfillment of our wishes, key to being able to attain what we're all looking for, which basically is happiness, in truth, lasting happiness. So right at the beginning of that final chapter, Venerable Geshe Kelsang, he writes, "We should know that since beginningless time, our way of identifying ourself has been mistaken. We believe that our self that we normally see is ourself. This belief is ignorance because our self that we normally see does not exist." I'm just going to repeat that. We should know that since beginningless time, our way of identifying ourself has been mistaken. So essentially, what's being said here is that our self-image at the moment is, well, here's the problem. Let me rephrase that. How we perceive ourselves is incorrect. We should know, as it says, that since beginningless time, our way of identifying ourselves has been mistaken, because our self that's appearing to us at the moment is just an image. But we believe that that image is more than an image. There's an actual self in here, as if it feels like it's appearing to us objectively, as if it's existing. We say from its own side, like we're like observing the self. So if an unhappy self is appearing to you, you just go, I am unhappy. If a happy self is appearing, you go, I am happy. As if there's this objectively existing unhappy or happy self. We believe that our self that we normally see is ourself. So we believe that this temporary, changing image, that's me. We grasp at it. This belief is ignorance. Because our self that we normally see does not exist. So we're not saying that you don't exist. This is super deep, by the way, and we're just going to touch upon it right here, this topic. But we're not saying that you don't exist. You do exist. But you just don't exist in the way that you perceive yourself to exist, the way you think that you exist, because we just naturally perceive ourselves and assume that we're more than just this image, that there's a kind of objectively existing me, and we grasp at that. We believe that version of ourself, the objectively existing self, to be who we really are. And as Geshe Kelsang is saying, this belief is ignorance. Because that self, the misapprehended self, actually doesn't exist. So, I mean, maybe that sounds intriguing, but it's also super important in a very practical way. You know, like I said, we're basically going to be looking at how we can feel good about ourselves. And the issue is really that if we check, most of us don't feel that good about ourselves. Maybe we feel okay about ourselves, or pretty good about ourselves, or even happy with ourselves occasionally. But there are many times when we don't feel particularly good about ourselves. There are many times when we feel, you know, sometimes really bad about ourselves. I mean, if you check, some people experience intense self-loathing, self-hatred. Why? Well, because what is the self? The self, and this is explained throughout this chapter, the self is just an idea. You know, like I asked before, well, where is that self you're relating to? So it's not something in here that you can point at. So would you say that your self is in your mind? I mean, if you think about it, where else could it be? And the interesting thing about yourself is, even though you kind of cling to it as if it's this fixed entity, it's always changing. One moment you're happy, the next moment you're unhappy. One moment you're confident, the next moment you're insecure. So what's going on? Basically, certain feelings, certain thoughts are arising, say happiness, and you go, I am unhappy. It's like you put your name tag on the happy feelings. But you're not recognizing that that's what's going on, that there's an experience, some mental states are arising, and then you are associating yourself with those, and then believing that yourself is somehow fixed within that. As Geshe Kelsang just said, this belief is ignorance, and we grasp at that. And the problem there is that if we say have a certain tendency towards unhappiness or towards anxiety or towards insecurity, well, we're constantly associating ourselves with that, and that self is appearing to be like objectively existing in that association with those negative feelings. And so we start thinking, I am an anxious person. I am an insecure person. I am a not good enough person. I am an overwhelmed person. Yeah, so we don't feel good about ourselves because there's a lot of pain associated with that. Unhappy feelings. And at some point, because we're trying to change, we want to be happy, we want to be peaceful, but we keep getting stuck in this negative self-image that we believe is who we really are. And then, yes, maybe feelings of self-hatred, self-loathing. I mean, if you check, if you look in general throughout our society, I think what you'll see, recognize in how we go about basically living, you'll recognize that there's this enormous internal discomfort. I mean, think of our relationship to our phones. Like the moment there's a little bit of space that opens up in our life, we don't like, let me settle into my peaceful, pure nature. We don't associate just being with ourself as a joyful, peaceful, blissful experience. No, we immediately want to go away. What can I look at? What can I touch? What can I eat? What can I smell? How can I distract myself? And people seeking good feelings, for example, in how many people like what I'm doing, how many people appreciate me, people seeking fame, thinking that that's going to make them happy. Or it could be wealth, or it could be possessions, it could be power. But not necessarily coming from a really beneficial motivation, but rather trying to cover up that discomfort. Coming because we're believing that the anxious self, the insecure self, the hurt self, traumatized self that's appearing to us is who we really are. And we get stuck there. We get stuck there. So furthermore, in that same section, Geshe Kelsang writes, because of this ignorance, we develop and experience various kinds of mistaken appearance. And because of this, we experience various kinds of suffering and problems as hallucinations throughout this life and in life after life endlessly. Hallucinations. He's saying that we're experiencing sufferings and problems as hallucinations. Why are they hallucinations? You might say, but this person doesn't like me. That's making me unhappy. But only because we're believing that that unhappy self is who you really are. But that unhappy self is your own mental creation. If you begin to recognize that the self that you're relating to is an idea, an image, a thought, it's actually an enormously hopeful insight, because you can change your mind. You can change how you think. We're grasping at ourself as if it's this objectively existing fixed thing. I'm intrinsically anxious, I'm intrinsically depressed, I'm intrinsically hurt or insecure or whatever it may be. You can fill in your own adjective to describe how you perceive yourself. But it's not fixed. It's a thought, it's an idea. When we're talking about improving our self-image, it's actually the wrong way of phrasing it. Because when you recognize that your painful self-image, your negative self-image, is just an image, you don't improve the image, you drop the image. Like in order to develop a positive mind, you have to drop the negative mind or the unhappy mind, right? And that's what we really want to just point out, how we can at least begin to pull this off, dropping the negative self-image, and then allowing ourselves to build up a beneficial, positive self-image way of relating to ourselves that is actually in alignment with our nature. And that's where meditation comes in. So meditation is absolutely fundamental to this. In what way? So we teach many meditations within the Buddhist path to enlightenment. Many meditations on how to improve ourselves based on this deep insight that there isn't a fixed self, that we can change our experience of ourself and of others and our world just by changing our mind. Many meditations. In fact, that's what the whole path to enlightenment is all about. Beautiful methods to increase our kindness, our love, our compassion, our wisdom. But they're all founded upon an essential insight. And I just want to share that insight with you as like a key starting point. to how we can go about letting go of the painful self-image and beginning to construct, we might say, a pure self-image, a correct self-image, one that works and is beneficial, but it works and it's beneficial precisely because it's in accordance with our nature. So in the back of How to Transform Your Life, there's an appendix, a section on what is meditation. And in it, Geshe Kelsang basically presents us with a basic foundational meditation, simple breathing meditation. There are other techniques we can use to accomplish this, but we can use what Venerable Geshe suggests here, which is the breathing meditation. So I'll just basically explain it. You'll have to learn how to do it elsewhere, but or just follow the instructions in the book. You can of course download the book for free online. But if you allow yourself to just focus on the experience of the breath as you inhale and exhale, your mind will wander, but over time you'll get better and better at basically being able to just stay with that sensation of the air entering and exiting your nostrils. And as you get better at being able to stay with that sensation, it means that you're paying less and less attention to all the other thoughts that are constantly popping up about this and about that. Most of those thoughts actually worrying about that self that you normally see, essentially orbiting around that painful self-image. Oh, what do they think about me? Oh, I haven't done this. Oh, I really should do that. I can't believe this happened, blah, 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 you know? But when you're able to just allow your mind to just abide, no pushing, no shoving, just very gently enjoy that sensation of the breath, you stop paying attention to all the blah, 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 and your mind will settle. And when your mind settles, something really special happens, something really quite extraordinary. When your mind settles, an experience of peace will arise. That's incredible. You know, as I often quote from this appendix, when the turbulence of distracting thoughts subsides and our mind becomes still, a deep happiness and contentment naturally arise from within. A deep happiness and contentment naturally arise from within. So maybe to begin with, you won't experience deep happiness, but it will come. Initially, just a little bit of happiness, a little bit of peace. And what you want to allow yourself to do is to experience that, abide there. But the real purpose of the meditation is not just the experience of peace or calm or even happiness at this point. We want the peace, the calm, and the happiness, but what we want even more than that is the understanding that will enable us to begin to create an ongoing experience of peace and happiness. What is that understanding? The understanding is that when your mind settles, peace and happiness arise, as it says, naturally. When the turbulence of distracting thoughts subsides and our mind becomes still, a deep happiness and contentment naturally arises from within. What is that telling us? It's telling us that peace and happiness are natural. Peace and happiness, the thing we all want, is natural to your mind when you allow it to settle. You know, we're all seeking peace and happiness, but we're seeking it on the basis of believing how we relate to ourselves associated with an agitated mind. So on the basis of that, we just seek peace and happiness in agitation. Let me touch this, smell this. And we're constantly seeking happiness in a place where there's no happiness to be found. It's like, you know, if I shake this glass of water, what happens is the water shakes. And maybe like I'm fed up with it shaking. And so I start thinking, well, what can I do to stop this water from shaking? Any ideas? And maybe we get very unhappy. We get overwhelmed by the water is constantly shaking. We shout at it, stop shaking, but it still shakes because I keep shaking it. And we think it's the nature of the water to shake, and it's going to shake forever, and we're always going to be unhappy, we're always going to be anxious. But it turns out that if we just put it down, the water settles. I don't have to do anything. If you put your mind down, so to speak, if you learn to let go of following the blah, 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 your mind will settle, peace and happiness will arise. And as is explained in How to Transform Your Life, what you want to do is begin to identify with that underlying natural source of peace and happiness. Number one. And number two, with the fact that initial experience of peace and happiness, when you start identifying with it, when you're able to hang out with it and focus on it, it's going to grow, it's going to expand. In other words, I, you, everybody has the potential naturally, because it's in accordance with our nature, has the potential naturally to be peaceful and happy, but also to increase that to a vast experience of joy and freedom. All the good stuff, love, kindness, compassion, wisdom, confidence, all this, we have the infrastructure of that naturally within our mind. So why don't we start to identify with that? I am someone who has an extraordinary potential. As Geshe Kelsang explains, he says, we all have the potential naturally, it's part of the nature of our mind, for limitless love, compassion, wisdom, peace, happiness, joy. He says, this is the pure essential nature of every living being. So here's what I would like to recommend. If you can, start your day. Start your day before you get too caught up in the negative self-image. Before you get too caught up in the blah, blah, blah all around that negative self-image. Start your day by just letting your mind settle into a peaceful state. Just a little bit. You can do this while still lying in bed, And just remembering, oh yeah, if I don't get all swept up by all that internal turmoil, I let the mind settle a bit. There's a little bit of peace there. There's a little bit of happiness there. It doesn't need to be big peace, big happiness, just a little bit. And go, oh yeah, this is my nature. And this is my potential. And so today, I'm going to remember, yes, I have anger. Yes, I have attachment. Yes, I get envious. Yes, I feel competitive. Yes, I'm overwhelmed. Yes, I'm insecure, blah, blah, blah. But that's not my nature. That's all based on my misapprehension of who I really am. That's based on a negative self-image that I've constructed through habit and ignorance. So let's start creating a new self-image. So that's going to be a process, isn't it? Because the habit is going to keep taking us back to the old ways of behaving and thinking. Geshe Kelsang, he explains in here, and I'll just go through this one point. So he's talking about how when you start practicing, when you start training in this way, yes, you're going to come up against your faults in the sense of your tendency to get caught up in painful states of mind. So he says here, although we need, this is page 120, by the way, How to Transform Your Life. Although we need to be acutely aware of our faults, we must never allow ourselves to become overwhelmed or discouraged by them. We may have a lot of anger in our mind, but this does not mean that we're an inherently angry person. No matter how many delusions, anger, jealousy, greed, These are all disturbed states of mind. They're deluded states of mind because they're based on that misapprehension of ourself and others. No matter how many delusions we may have in our mind or how strong they are not an essential part of our mind. They are defilements that temporarily pollute our mind, but do not sully its pure essential nature. They are like mud that dirties water, but never becomes an intrinsic part of it. Just as mud can always be removed to reveal pure, clear water, so delusions can be removed to reveal the natural purity and clarity of our mind. In other words, you let the mud settle. You know, if I put a sand in here and in the water and stir it up, and now if I were to ask you, is the water clear? You'd probably go, no. But actually, you'd be wrong. The water is clear. You just need to let the mud settle. We need to let the mind settle. And there it is, the natural purity within. So just as mud can always be removed to reveal pure, clear water, so delusions can be removed to reveal the natural purity and clarity of our mind. Instead, we should identify with our pure potential and develop the wisdom and courage to overcome our delusions. Yes. Allow your mind to settle. Connect to that little bit of peace, but recognize this is your pure potential, your essential nature, your potential for freedom from the delusions, freedom from the mud, freedom from the distortion arising from the shaking water. So we see the faults, but we use the faults to remind us, stop shaking the water. Stop identifying with the mud. Find your way back to that peaceful, pure heart and nurture that every day. I'm a person who can change. I'm a person who can grow. I can let go of my insecurity. I can develop confidence. I can let go of my self-centeredness and develop an open, loving heart, and so on the basis of recognizing that underlying pure nature. Thank you.